Ms. Chavez-DeRemer is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, the last time you were before this committee, we discussed the short-sighted, in my opinion and many others, tolling plans in Oregon. Since then, Oregon Governor Tina Kotek thankfully has shelved those plans to toll our Oregon commuters. Another flawed tolling plan was also recently suspended in New York City when Governor Kathy Hochul announced that she would pause the congestion pricing for commuters in Manhattan, a plan that a few of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle on this very committee opposed. And Mr. Secretary, do you think the suspension of these tolling plans is indicative of a larger trend? And to follow up with that, the general public seems to me, and I think to many others, they're finally had enough of paying these exorbitant prices. And as former mayors, and we discussed that earlier, we care about what's happening on the ground in our districts, and that's where we get the feedback. So can you answer those questions for me?
Well, of course, we take care to respect the role that state and local governments have in making decisions that are in their jurisdiction, and often these tolling calls are among them. I also recognize that states and local jurisdictions face a lot of challenges in funding roads, bridges, other things that are needed. Where we come in is to make sure that any measure that is taken meets any federal requirements, if it's a federal road, but also that we provide funding to help so that there's the capital in place. That now I want to be clear, I'm not saying it's a substitute for local or state funding. In fact, the more a state or local community is ready to step up, often the more we can do in turn. But we do want to make sure we move out of the era that we lived in back when I was mayor, when it sounded like the answer too often from the federal government was, you're on your own to find a way to fund this project.
Okay, so if our governors are concerned, I just mentioned two of them, with the price tags of these large-scale infrastructure projects during the time of high inflation, and we're seeing that today. And so I think it's a good idea. And with the chairwoman sitting behind me from Utah, we're talking about permitting reform. And Congresswoman Malloy and I have a new bill, the Full Responsibility and Expedited Enforcement, or the FREE Act. This legislation aims to streamline the federal permitting process by introducing a permit-by-rule system. Permit-by-rule is an approach where we set preset standards are established for permit issuance, allowing for automatic approval once these standards are met by the applicant. This method reduces wait times, minimizes bureaucratic delays, and focuses on compliance enforcement rather than lengthy initial reviews of the permit application. The reconstruction of significant infrastructure like the Francis Scott Key Bridge requires coordinated efforts between the federal and state agencies. Permit by rule can enhance this coordination and lead to more efficient uses of resources and faster completion. Another large infrastructure project my constituents are all too familiar with is the I-5 bridge replacement, which is slated to begin construction in late 2025, but not completed as a project until 2033, 8 years. I can't help but imagine that if permit by rule were to be implemented to at least some portions of the project, that Oregonians and Washingtonians would be able to traverse the Columbia River much sooner. So with that said, Mr. Secretary, how are the federal and state agencies collaborating to ensure a smooth permitting process for bridge reconstruction?
Well, we want to make sure that the permitting process is not an obstacle to prompt project delivery.
But it is.
And we've undertaken a number of measures to help with that. That's included programmatic agreements so that you can batch projects if they might travel together because they have certain things in common. Just digitizing the NEPA process we find could add a lot of value. We've launched a modernizing NEPA challenge, and we're promoting more of those kind of web-based approaches. And we're maximizing the use of categorical exclusions. Now, admittedly, that won't apply in a project as large and complex as the IBR. We understand that.
But do you think that implementing the permit by rule, which again would provide the clear standards, expedite permit issuance, serve as a model for future infrastructure projects to enhance that interagency coordination and reduce those permitting delays? I mean, that seems to be the problem, and it costs money.
I'm interested in anything that can reduce unnecessary delays, so I'd welcome a chance to see more about the text of your proposal and how it might be put to work.
Okay. Well, the smaller scale project, installing the EV chargers, there was some conversation, but it was recently reported that despite the administration's commitment to install 500,000 chargers by 2030, only 8 have been installed since the IIJA was enacted 2 years ago. Mr. Secretary, installing an EV charger can't be that hard if the funding's already allocated. And if the projects were to receive categorical exclusion designation under NEPA, would permit by rule help alleviate delayed construction of the chargers as well?
Without knowing the particulars of the structure of the program you're describing, it's certainly possible that anything that simplifies environmental processes could lead to a faster project delivery.
Well, I like the world of possibilities, for sure. So I look forward to working with your office on this, Congresswoman Malloy and I, and further discussing the permit by rule on both the small and the large capacities. And with that, I'll yield back my time.